Welcome to the digital lessons. Director of School Education of Telangana Government is welcoming you for digital lessons. District Educational Officer Sri K. Narayan Reddy Garu is welcoming you for these lessons, and he is conducting for digital lessons for our students. And all of you use these lessons and learn the material. I am B.SUNEETha, School Assistant BioScience at Government High School Somidi, Kazipet Mandal, Warangal Urban District. Today's lesson is cell introduction, typical cell. After completing the lesson, the student will answer some topics. By the end of the lesson, the student will learn these concepts. The students will be able to know the importance of the cell. They may understand that cell is structural and functional unit of life. They explain the discovery of cell. They identify cell organelles. They differentiate the plant cell and animal cell. In your earlier classes, you learned something about the cell. In 8th class, you learned the lesson. Cell is a basic unit of life. So, our earth is a beautiful place where in different types of living organisms live happily. All living organisms are composed of cells, from tiny mosses to huge trees, and from invisible bacteria to huge blue whales, all have made with a basic unit called cell. All living organisms carry out certain functions in their body. Our body also made with cells. In our body, there are some metabolic systems are there. These systems are doing their duty. Of the functioning of the systems is useful to survive our body. Do you know what is the basic structural unit of the organs? And what is the basic structural unit of the body? Who discovered the cells? What is the microscope? What is the nucleus? How is the microscope is useful in observing the cells? How many types of microscopes are there to observe the cells? So these are all the questions. We have to know something about these questions. In this lesson, we shall learn answers for these questions. So let us know. So in our 8th class lesson, we learned that cells are very small in size, which cannot be seen through the naked eyes. So what shall we do? We use an instrument to watch these microorganisms and cells. So let us answer these questions and learn more about the typical plant and animal cells and identify the cell organelles and differentiate the plant and animal cells. Here in this picture, a scientist we shall see. His name was Robert Hooke and he was a famous scientist. He invented the cell. In 1665, he takes some bark tissues, dead tissues of an oak tree, and he prepared a slide with that cells. He observed that some room-like structures and honeycombs in that slide. He named that the honeycombs are as cell. In Latin, cell means a small room. So later it was named as cell. In this way, Robert Hooke discovered the cell. Here it is a simple microscope. Before 350 years, there is no chance to see the living organisms of micro living organisms. Only the people see which animals and plants are visible. So after discovering of the microscope, it is easy to see the small, minute, microscopic organs and microscopic living beings and microscopic cells. So Anton van Leeuwenhoek invented the simple microscope. He prepared the microscope with convex lens, and this microscope invention is very useful to see microorganisms and cell organelles. After his invention in 1665, Robert Hooke invented the cell. In Robert Hooke invention, he used compound microscope for cell observation, and this is a compound microscope, and this is an electron microscope. These two are useful to see the inner parts of the cells and microorganisms. Simple microscope is only usable to see the outer layer of the cell and outer layer of the microorganisms. But compound microscope and electron microscopes are useful to the inner parts of the cell and microorganisms. It is an onion peel, and we see that here some cells we are observing in this microscopic slide, and this is a slide. This is a cell, and in this it is a nucleus. This is cell wall, and this is cytoplasm. So in this way we are observing cells, and this is cheek cells of human being, and that means these are all animal cells. So this animal cell is round in shape, and this is thick color cell organelle is nucleus, and the outer layer is plasma membrane. So there are differences between plant cell and animal cell. What are the differences? We shall see. So here there are two cells in this picture. One is prokaryotic and second one is eukaryotic. This prokaryotic cell is not having nucleus, but eukaryotic cell is having a nucleus. In this prokaryotic cell, only nucleic acid of RNA or DNA is present, but in eukaryotic cells, nucleus is present. So these are very premier living organisms, old living organisms, and evolution is happening from these organisms to prokaryotes to eukaryotes. So here, very small living organisms are present in prokaryotic cells. For example, here coronavirus. Coronavirus is also a prokaryotic living organism, but it is only having RNA in its body and an outer layer, and it was covered with a fat material. But it is very horrible to bear this coronavirus for us. Here, the classification of living beings are two types according to the cells. They are unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Here, unicellular organisms are having only one cell in its body. For example, here the living organism amoeba is having only one cell in its body. All life processes are taking place in its one cell. For example, digestion, respiration, etc. Every life process is taking place in its unicell. So this cell is covered with plasma membrane and it is moved with the help of pseudopores. So this contractile vacuole is helpful for life processes and food vacuole is helpful to ingestion of food materials. And this is nucleus and this is endoplasm. So these are all the inner parts, inner organisms, inner inner materials of this unicellular organism. So this is multicellular organism. So for example, it is Hydra. This Hydra is a multicellular organism. It is having a lot of cells. We are also multicellular organisms. Here it is a plant. In these plants, a lot of cells are present, but these cells are divided into parts, stem, leaf, root, etc. And some photosynthesis, respiration, etc. life processes are taking place in its body. So these are animals. So these are also multicellular organisms. Millions of cells are present in its body. So the important points of this lesson is the cell was discovered by Robert Hooke in 1665. Cell is the basic unit of life. Our earth is a beautiful place. All living organisms are living on the earth. All living beings are having cells in their body. According to number of cells in living beings' body, there are two types. They are unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Microscope is useful to observe the cell. So cell is the structural and functional unit of the life. So another thing we learn is the typical plant cell. So typical means here the model of cell. So in this lesson we saw the plants and the plants are having a lot of cells in its body. But how the cells are formed? So the cell is having a plasma membrane outside and it is surrounded with cell wall. In that cell wall and plasma membrane there is a cytoplasm, jelly-like cytoplasm. In that jelly-like cytoplasm some organelles are present. They are doing their duties. So what are the organelles? We shall see. The organelles of a plant cell are cell wall, plasma membrane, nucleus, mitochondria, plastids, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, lysosomes, and vacuoles. So these are all organelles which are useful to doing the life processes in plants' body. So next, animal cell. In animal cell is also some organelles in its body. So every animal is made with cells. So is there any difference between animal cell and plant cell? Yes, some differences are there. So what are the differences? First you learn about the organelles of the animals. So these are all organelles of the animal cell. Plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, mitochondria, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, lysosomes, vacuoles. These are all the organelles of animals. So here only the plasma membrane is only present in animals. So this layer is protected and it is a selective permeability layer to the cell. What is selective permeability? Selective permeability means the materials which are entering into the cell is selected by this membrane. If the plasma membrane is not having this selective permeability, all materials are entering into the cell body, water, etc. All materials are entering into the body and the cell is split. If the sending out materials also, which, which materials are excreted from the cell are selected by the plasma membrane. So plasma membrane is having selective permeability and it is useful to balance the materials which are entering to and exit to from the body. And nucleus, rough endoplasmic reticulum, ribosomes, cytoplasm, mitochondria, lysosomes. These are all the organelles of animal cell. In next class, we shall see the cell structure and other organelles which are useful to doing the metabolism of cell. So here the cell structure and the organelles are given clearly in this slide. So the differences between animal cell and plant cell. Here both cells are visible to see, but some differences are there. Here plant cell is having an extra outer layer that is called cell wall. This cell wall is strong and it is hard to touch, but animal cell is having only plasma membrane to outside of the cell. It is covering the cell. So if we touch our body, it will be very smooth. If we touch a plant, it is so hard to touch. So cell wall is hard to touch. That's why plant is very hard to touch. So here nucleus is present both in plant cell and animal cell. A cell membrane is say having both animal cell and plant cell. So next another difference is vacuole. A large vacuole is present in plant cell, but there is a chance to small vacuoles present in animal cells. So there is no chloroplast in plant cell. Only animal cell does not has animal cell does not has chloroplast. Plant cell is having chloroplast. So these are the differences of animal cell and plants. Children, I think you are all understood the lesson. So all of you answer these questions in your notebooks. So this is useful to further classes. Thank you.